In the meantime, why don't you tell us a little bit about your grow? Feel free to screen share, or I can throw your Instagram up here. There we go.
Who are you talking to, Steve? Oh, fishy buds.
Yep.
Sure. So what you see here in this first set of pictures is the start of the new indoor system. And then we're kind of going down, you'll see a lot of baking included. So yeah, this is, right now I've got 2 indica mothers, and I just want to see which one I'm going to keep as a mother to continue going through the winter in my new indoor system. So I'll be posting pictures of those on a regular basis. In the new indoor system, I've got 5 30-gallon fish tanks in total. So that's just one of the mystery snails that I have to help clean stuff up. This is part of a control group. So I've got several indoor light controlled rooms. And this one is just some stuff that I have growing in soil. So I can compare that, you know, basically head to head with stuff that I'm growing in the aquaponics system. That's a site of the new system that I have for inside here. So these are Dutch buckets just with the cheap little Amazon dripper irrigation system. And one of these setups is in light controlled and the other isn't. Then we get out into the greenhouse area where I've got the 8x24 greenhouse. So I live about 4 kilometers from the Bay of Fundy. My average temperature in the summer, I get daytime highs upwards of somewhere around 22, 23 degrees. So doing really high quality outdoor grow, it doesn't work very well for me. What I found is if I have either a cold frame or inside a greenhouse, I'm getting a whole lot better grow in my area. So that's kind of the whole reason that I started doing all of these grows, is just trying to make it work in my area. And I gotta say, I love Comets for doing aquaponics just because they are plentiful and I can buy 10 or 12 of them to set up a very small test system. Again, cold frames because the stuff outside just doesn't always want to pick up very well. So just putting together some rough 2x4 cold frames doesn't have to be real tough. I get a lot of snow load, but they won't really need to be in use until mid-March.
Again, do you have anything else you'd like me to highlight in particular? I'm happy to pull up whatever.
Not really. I mean, one of the big things that you are going to see more often on here is more of this gluten-free baking stuff. My girlfriend is gluten-free and kind of gave me a challenge to start baking more things for her.
Awesome. Well, looks like you have quite the nice little setup there, man. That's awesome.
A lot of media beds.
Tell us a little bit about the wall in the back there. A lot of people don't know about those. So
yeah, this is just recycled pop cans and beer cans filled with sand. And I've got a little bit of Alex acrylic caulking to hold them together, but painted black. They're like a battery for heat. So during the day, they'll warm up. And then as the ambient temperature inside the greenhouse drops, that's going to allow it to come back out to the rest of the greenhouse and help keep things warmed longer and just passive heating instead of needing to rely on as much propane as I did the one year I tried to run year round.
Sorry, just getting everything started here. Let me make sure we are on the right view here. Awesome. So we also have a Brain Grow just joined us. Brain, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your grow? you've been on the podcast before a long time ago. I think it was over 100 episodes ago. But you grow, you've been doing home aquaponics for quite a while.
Yeah, I've been doing aquaponics like 4 years or so, something like that. And with my setup, I've always been really into doing the ferments and like lactobacillus and the Korean natural farming inputs and stuff like that. And as for my system, I actually I can describe my system to you guys. It was 2 75-gallon stock tanks, one as the sump tank, in which that would pump up into the grow beds, which would then drain into the fish tank, and then that would overflow into the swirl filter and cycle back into the sump tank that way. And I had I think they were about 15 gallons was the volume of the grow beds that I used, and I had 3 grow beds lined up all next to each other. They all received the same water and whatnot. And yeah, that was pretty much the system that I ran. And I've always had really good success using dual root zone, of course. Like, in my opinion, anymore, that's the only way to really go. It really produced superior results to anything else that I had ever tried before. So I always loved the dual root zone method.
Awesome. Well, Scotty's going to be with us momentarily. And we have our other panelists who I have not heard from in the last hour or so. Hopefully he joins us here shortly. We did have one other panelist that was supposed to be with us. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened. Anyways, Marty and I also have grown quite a bit at home, so we'll help fill in a little bit while we're waiting for Scotty and them to join. What are some of the things that you guys have found that have been kind of challenges with setting up your home aquaponic system? Maybe we'll start off with that.
For myself, it's just been a lot of self-taught more than anything else. So, you know, I love the fact that everybody's got so much resources out on the internet, but until I actually try it myself. So I think my biggest challenge has been keeping the water off of the hardwood floors a lot of the time. I mean, really, I'm in an excellent spot where I don't have to worry so much about pest control as long as I keep good biosecurity and I'm not bringing too many plants indoors from outdoors. It's been really easy. So, you know, compared to soil growing, this has definitely been a big bonus for me.
So for me, one of the biggest challenges that I really had a hard time dealing with initially was getting the pH to the level where you want it. And so what I found that was always just really the easiest thing to do, because in my hometown, the water was like 8.5, hella calcium, you know, like it was really, really difficult to try to get that down to the pH where I wanted it. And so I think a lot of people really kind of have an understanding or misunderstanding, however you want to say it, where like you can just throw chemicals at your water and the pH is going to drop down to where you want it, you know. But in my experiences, what I've always had the most success with is just simply just doing water changes, you know, get you some purified or distilled water, or, you know, whatever you have to do to get that pH to drop down, to get those ppms down, you know, because the higher the ppms of the calcium and stuff like that, you know, it just buffers it up to where it's damn near impossible to drop it down using chemical inputs and stuff like that.
It's almost like a shotgun method in reverse, right? Where you're just diluting everything and trying to bring those ppms down, just like you're talking about. So rather than maybe trying to target a specific one, you know, you can drop all levels down and then build back up to where you want to go, which is a great option, especially in smaller systems. You know, if you've got like, you know, a 10,000 gallon system, it may not quite work the same way, but especially if you're like anywhere under like, 2,000 gallons, it's probably going to be a lot easier for you to, drop some water, do a water change, and just getting a feel for how much you need to top off and when, and knowing what your water input is. If you're on well water, kind of like Rango was just talking about, I mean, that's some of that stuff you're not really going to know until you start doing it. It's almost like, you can't intellectually learn to dribble a basketball. At some point, you like have to get up and start trying to figure out how to do it and get a feel for it. So you can get coached once you start trying, and people can help you along the way. But there's an element to where you can't just sit in a chair anymore and do that. So definitely wanted to echo what Fishy Buds was saying there, that online learning is great, and it's definitely come a long ways. At least since I started, kind of like what Murray was talking about. I think there was only, Steve, what was the YouTube guy that was on there? He did a home grow, Silverarm 32 was, I think, the only YouTuber that I could find doing anything aquaponic related when I started. It was probably like 8 years ago or something like that now.
And I reached out to him to be on here. I don't know what happened. I haven't seen him post in quite a while, or what happened with him, but he's been on the show too on a couple early episodes.
Oh yeah, I love that guy. Very cool. But just the fact that we can have an entire like 2-day conference full of people that are doing it is just it's a huge difference maker, and definitely consume all that content, but don't be afraid to get your hands dirty at some point. And then you'll find all this content even more intriguing, and you'll get more out of it once you have some experience, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, we also have Aquaponic Cannabis joined us. He's also had an aquaponic channel for quite a long time. I think at least 3 or 4 years or more. I know I've seen his stuff around for quite a while. I'm excited to have him on the panel today. And you put out quite a bit of info on that as well on a couple of different platforms. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and your grow?
Yeah, so I'm excited to be here with everybody as far as it goes. A little bit about my grow. I originally started off with just an aquarium and a little gallon tote. And then slowly I've progressed my system. I've gone through 5-gallon buckets, doing a Dutch bucket design as far as my setup goes. And then I just transitioned over to a DWC type setup, so that way I could have a higher yield, more area for my roots, and then as well as more height in my room, so that way I can try to maximize the space as far as it goes there. I love sharing all the information that I've learned and everything like that, and everything that I do with my setups and everything. I love sharing all of it. I have a 3D printer and I like to do a lot of 3D designing. So sometimes I try to incorporate my own designs into my setup and see if I can maybe perfect a lot of the other things that I'm working on.
Awesome. So what are some of the different cultivars that you guys have all tried? Why don't we start off with Brain Grow?
Okay, let's see. Cultivars I've tried. I've tried Green Alien. That was from I can't remember the breeder that came from, somewhere in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, Dark Star, which was one that produced like really dark purple, like almost black leaves. I've grown CBD strains in there. One in particular was called CBD Therapy, and I've pretty much always had success with growing whatever cultivars that I've tried, but I really attribute that to the dual root zone, because in all my experiences, that really has just made the whole thing just go a whole lot smoother, a whole lot more effortless. Of course, you gotta keep track of all your levels and stuff like that, but once you know how to do that, and then you're using dual root zone on top of that, pretty much anything I've ever tried has been fairly successful with aquaponics.
All right. Do you want to go next, Fishy Buzz?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly stick to indica stuff just because of the height requirements, and I find it's a little bit easier to deal with most of the time. So LA Confidential, Northern Lights, Bubba Kush, at least the seed catalog said that they're all indicas. So sometimes I kind of wonder at how good the seed catalogs are in some places. Other than that, right now, I think I've got the weird purple stuff that I got from somebody in a bag, and some love potion on the go.
What about you, Aquaponics Cannabis?
The few of the strains that I've grown so far, White Gorilla, which is a White Widow Gorilla Glue cross. Got that from one of my friends that was cultivating some clones. And then I just really, right now I have some cherry bomb that's grown that I got from a local seed bank by me. And then otherwise I've had great, from every single strain that I've grown, I've had nothing but great potential out of them. So I see great success so far as it goes. And I try to go to the local seed bank and try different strains, see which is going to be the best to grow in the system. So that way I can find my go-to every time, so to speak.
That's awesome. I have also have some cherry bomb I got from Mr. Green Jeans garden himself. And then I also have some that I got from Cascadian Grown that were an old line of cherry bomb as well. So definitely a great cut. What about you, Marty?
Oh, man, so many. Let's see. We did lemon OG. We did OG. We did fruit punch, shishka berry, train wreck. Sour strawberry. Some of the more recent ones are like Thorsberry, Snowman, straight sour D. Most of those are on my YouTube channel. Did updates. We did a blue cheese in the outdoor one year. We did a mango. I don't know. There's probably at least 20 different strains at this point. It probably even more than that. So just a ton of them. Again, I kind of like everyone else is saying, across the board. And not only have I grown them, like all those different cuts in aquaponics, but some of them I've grown the same cuts also in various, whether you're talking about segregated planters or containers or raised beds. We did Agent Orange in Kim Dog and Perkle, all in raised beds and aquaponics both. So yeah, we just have really done a number of different strains and found that across the board, you find some stuff in aquaponics just comes out more. You get a different flavor and terpene profile that is more pungent, so if it's gas, it's gassier. If it's fruit, it's fruitier. And then the other thing is just frost. The trichome coverage extends all the way into shade leaves on a number of different cultivars, and in comparison to other methods of growing across the board. The only one that really gets close is really quality living soil and raised beds, but still doesn't really get the same type of quality, in my opinion. And that's in like pretty much, I didn't go all those strains side by side, but I think I've done probably 10 or 12 of them now in straight side by sides and clones of the same mom in various growing methods, including aquaponics. So definitely done a lot of home growing with a lot of different strains, which is kind of difficult to do when you can only grow like, between 12 and 24 plants at a time. Thanks to Oregon's regulations, it's actually a lot harder than you think to try to keep any sort of variety around for very long. But yeah, so that's over probably like the past 7 to 8 years.
Awesome. I've grown quite a few different ones. You guys have heard about the blue hash that I've been growing for a long time, and a bunch of other different strains. Golden Goat's a good one. Bruce Banner, Godbud. I'm just trying to think of other ones that were just like really good yielders. And then just some funky ones. Three Little Birds was really good for a CBD heavy cultivar. The Dem Healer from Dragonfly, the G13 hash plant that I got from them, as well as probably my single favorite daily driver smoke. I can puff on that all day long and be lit and still functional and get a ton done, and like gives you that like energy rush that like having a nice coffee, you know what I mean? It's that good like get shit done weed, you know what I mean? It's one of my favorites.
Right.
And then a big fan of like those heavy thick Nepalese, Pakistani, you know, Afghani, like they get that thick anthocyanin, that thick hashy, you know, that heavy smoke. I like that.
Very cool. I will say that the probably Snowman, I would say, grows the fastest. Like you can clearly tell, and next to pretty much any other strain that I've seen in aquaponics, it really seems to grow a vigorous growth rate in veg. Is probably the only one that I can think of that I might say like just really head and shoulders above other plants. It doesn't necessarily like finish any faster or develop any faster, but you get larger plants quicker. It cuts down your veg time, you know, from 3 to 4 weeks down to, you know, 2 to 2.5 weeks. So cool stuff.
Awesome. We had another question we actually had a great question from chat. I wanted to throw up to the panelists. Did any of you have any fish keeping experience before you built your home system? If not, how has the learning curve been in dealing with the fish welfare portion of your system? And whoever wants to go first is welcome to take the floor.
Yeah, I didn't have any real amount of experience. I might have had a few goldfish growing up, and my father had a little pond out in his backyard. But again, growing the comets has been really good because they're such a tough fish. Though I have lost quite a few from time to time. I guess growing up working with livestock made me kind of used to that and prepared.
Sorry about that. I had to restart the recording there to make sure we don't lose the end like we did yesterday. Or we didn't totally lose it, but we're not sure if I can recover it. So to make sure we don't have any issues, I do apologize for the interruption. Go ahead. What
Yeah,
about,
I also did not have any experience with raising fish, and as far as the learning curve goes, like that's really no big deal. The equipment that you can buy to test your levels, as long as you do enough research and you understand what your levels are supposed to be at and what everything means whenever you read it on your test kit, then it's all good. You start your system just the way, you know, research will tell you to do. Throw you maybe one fish in there to get the nitrification process started, to get the fish pooping and to start attracting your first bacteria. And then you start testing your levels to see how much they have proliferated. And then the next bacteria comes along and you have you know, where you can test for that, and you can see how much that bacteria has proliferated, and then you see your levels of ammonia completely drop down, and then that's whenever you know your system is ready to go, you know. So like, as long as you're not doing any really drastic sudden changes to your system, it's really not that hard to learn how to raise fish, as long as you just have patience for it.
All right. What about you, Aquaponic Cannabis?
Yeah, so I've actually kept fish most of my life since I was super little. I was a really big aquarium hobbyist. To start off with, I've had saltwater tanks, all sorts of different things as far as it goes. So I was already into the fish game before I got into the aquaponics game. So it was kind of a weird transition for me, because obviously you have to monitor a lot of the same chemicals for the fish when you're just keeping them regularly, just to make sure that obviously your fish don't die. But with incorporating the natural symbiotic relationship between plant and animal, actually monitors, monitoring the chemicals is one of those things that you would normally check anyways in aquarium hobbies. And then with the aquaponics, it's just checking the same levels, checking everything the same, making sure that the fish are getting what they need. And it actually, you don't have to add a whole lot of chemicals to control the balances of a lot of the stuff. When it comes to pH and everything like that with the fish, is what I've noticed. When I was in the aquarium hobbies, like if pH would just fluctuate like that, it was a big swing. With the plants being involved, it's not a huge swing. It's something that can be caught early, and as long as you keep monitoring everything and all your levels, you're spot on, and it's fairly easy.
All right. What have you guys tried that maybe or hasn't worked out as well as you thought it would?
Okay, so no, go ahead, Fishy Butts, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have to say, I've probably tried about 5 different variations of all of my different systems that I've finally come to now. And without having failed, I don't think I would have ever learned. So, it's trying the Dutch buckets. I've had so many drain issues, flood and drain systems, trying to get a bell siphon working. I'm sure everybody's had all of these fun things happen over time.
So for me, a couple of things that I've tried that haven't worked so well have to do with pest management, and just quite simply, the first thing, ladybugs have never really worked out for me so well. And then the second thing would be diatomaceous earth. Also I've never really seen any kind of noticeable effects from using either of those two things in my system for pest management.
And I would agree with Fishy Buds. When I did the Dutch bucket design, I did have a really bad drainage issue. I even tried 3D printing a guard just to see if maybe I could try to keep the roots out as best as possible, or at least go out and be able to actually access the drain, so that way I could clear it out and make sure that the roots aren't getting clogged up in it. So I've had a lot of those issues as well. That's kind of why I went over to the DWC, which is what I'm trying out now because of the issues I did have with the Dutch bucket, to see if maybe I can try to negate a lot of those issues with a higher flow return and a higher flow in, just to kind of cycle the water faster, so that way it's not trying to suck up the roots into the drain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of in the same boat as Fishy Butts. Like I tried all kinds of different systems. I probably have built like 10 different ones at this point. Like first time I think I did a timer and just some hydrogen and like some little tiny buckets, almost like Dutch buckets, but they just had a drain that went right back down in. Like there was no like, real Dutch bucket drain system. And I mean, I guess it worked okay, but I had issues with it, like, the trying to figure out how long to have the timer on, because that I needed, obviously I wanted to cycle the water through on a pretty regular basis, but how often, and then it would change how long I needed the pump to go on, depending on how much root mass there was in there. So obviously I cut overflows and, like all kinds of different things, but ultimately I just figured out that I got really frustrated with the timer, and that's when I started looking into bell siphons and kind of watched a few videos. And luckily, I decided pretty early on that I wanted to do something besides bell siphons because so many people had issues with them. And I found a video. I don't even remember who it was now. I'll have to try to look it up at some point. But they had done loop siphons, and so I started working with those in loop siphons or U siphons. And so that was kind of my next setup. So I did half barrel beds with loop siphons. And all of them, I guess, kind of, are going to have some sort of issues, but none of them really, anything like traditional gardening, like weeding or, any different stuff like that. So, I mean, I did segregated planters, they worked, but really, for as much effort as I put into making them, I could have just had more media beds. So I really sort of felt like it wasn't really worth the effort to get what I felt like was not quite as good a quality. So that's where everything kind of accumulates into, my indoor system, which you guys can see on AP Med's YouTube or Instagram. And the greenhouse system has kind of been the accumulation of all of those different things in which I failed to learn, I guess you could say. But all of them really had different variations of issues. Constant height obviously doesn't have the type of air exchange in the root zone that we like to have. So there's a whole plethora of ways in which that I failed and learned from. And like I said, I'm probably like 10 systems deep at this point. So when you're just getting started, I highly recommend like Goldfish and just getting your hands dirty and finding a system that you like that maybe fits in where you're at in the space that you have, and fail and learn something.
Awesome. And then what's something that maybe you guys tried that worked out way better than you thought it would, or an input that you tried that really made a big difference, or some other change that you did to your system that you're like, man, why the hell was I not doing that sooner?
Labs. I mean, that's got to be like, for me, the main, like there was
Damn it, Marty, you took my answer.
It was like an accident for me. Like I had made labs. I think I found it in the Probiotic Farmers Association, the PFA. They have a huge group on Facebook, and shout out to them. I learned pretty much all of my original stuff from how to make labs and what their use is for just for putting on plants. And so I had some made up, and I just happened to have, I was working on top of my worm bin at the time, and so I had changed the filter paper out of my filter, so just covered in fish shit. It was sitting on top of my worm bin, because normally I just bury them in my worm bins, and that's how I just let them eat the stuff off the paper, and then eventually it just gets sort of worked in. And I spilled a shit ton of labs like all over the filter paper, and I kind of got pissed off and was like, all right, whatever, I'll deal with this later. And so I came back, I think it was the next day, like maybe a little more than 24 hours later, because it was early in the day, and I came back, I think the following evening, and it just had this crazy like mat over the top of it already, and it had areas where you could visibly see it like reducing the amount of solids in the filter paper. And so I was like, well, shit, that's what I'm trying to get rid of anyway. And started dosing it into the systems and talking about it on the podcast and sharing with other people. And now I integrate it all the time. And basically, I probably clean my media beds, a tenth of what I used to when I didn't use labs before. It's so easy to make. It's so cheap. It's so beneficial to plant growth, and it cleans your media beds. So that's my story of how I accidentally got into labs in my aquaponics system, which seems like a no-brainer now. Like, yeah, of course they would break down solids.
Yeah, and I've just follow up on what Marty says about labs. That really has served a pretty hardcore purpose. Like really kind of unbelievable to see how well it works against powdery mildew and fungus, any kind of fungus that grows on the surface of the leaves. It really just eliminates that right off the bat. And I know I've already mentioned dual root zone a couple times, but for those people that don't really know about the benefit of dual root zone, you have your water level that rises not quite up to the soil, and so every time that your grow beds flood and drain, it exchanges the air that's in the soil zone, which really produces a pretty fast rate of growth in my experiences. So the labs and then dual root zone for me.
I gotta say, I haven't really had that much chance to go into stuff like labs and dual root zones yet. It's on my to-do list, but for me, the biggest aha moment for my very first system was when I added heat and finally got that sign of changeover of the bacteria for the nitrogen cycle. So, you know, making sure that you've got the right conditions for cycling is going to be the biggest thing for me that really got it going.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Fishy Buds. I haven't really done a whole lot of dual root zone or anything as far as that stuff goes. Some things I obviously want to get into in the future, but haven't gotten into quite at this point. And then as well on top of that, just as he said, just making sure the cycles is going correctly is kind of key and essential. Making sure that you have the proper cycle with the flow is good for the nutrients and everything.
Awesome. I'll finish answering that question, then I'll introduce the new gentleman that just joined us. To me, it was the revelation of combining the soil food web methodology with the aquatic food web, and started instead of treating it like a hydroponic system, thinking of it as like aquatic soil, and you know, trying to build up a microbially biodiverse base that looks like soil under a microscope, and starting to think of it that way, and starting to incorporate things like Korean natural farming inputs and some of these other compost teas and other things. That really was a huge breakthrough for me and really helped me solve a lot of the issues and accelerate how quickly it takes to launch a system. I know a lot of times people talk about, oh, it takes 6 months to get your aquaponic system or 3 months to get your aquaponic system up and running. If you inoculate it with good nutrients, you can be up and running in 3 or 4 weeks with a pretty decently cycled system. You don't have to have these long lag times, especially when you get to commercial operations later on outside of the home scale. But even at the home scale, you know, you can get aquarium cycling nutrients at any pet store. You know, they're happy to sell them to you, and they're great for your aquaponic system. Just ignore the directions, take the cap off, and pour the whole thing in when you're doing cycling an aquaponic system, because you're just trying to inoculate the system with those microbes. You know, a microbe lift actually has a great one. Hey, there's Scotty.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So it looks like we got everybody sorted.
What's up, Scotty?
Hey,
What's up, Scotty?
Hey, everybody. I'm so sorry for being late. I feel terrible.
You're on time for a stoner, man. It's all good.
One of those techniques, man, is, you know, I'm used to being a baby to guru. But anyway, enough about me. Come on, let's catch up. What's going on, boys?
We also have Thomas also joined us as well. Thanks a lot for joining us, Thomas. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Let's see. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, there. Yeah. Hi, I'm Tom.
Oh, hey. Hey, what's
so
up, man?
hey, how's it going?
Hey, y'all. What's going on? This is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so I work at a aquaponics farm in Norman, Oklahoma. And we're a commercial facility. I actually didn't even mean to jump in on this. I was kind of just trying to figure out Zoom, but hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
He's going to be
For a Sunday night, man. I have internet. All right. It's going great, man.
And Scotty, why don't you introduce yourself and what you do real quick?
Yeah, right on. I am Scotty, go by the name Scotty Real online. I've been growing weed in, I wish basements, but in spare rooms and houses for, I don't know, 20 something years. And I tried just about every setup except for aquaponics. But I've been growing forever, and just kind of started. I actually do the Dude Grow Show, which is a cannabis podcast, and through that, I've learned more and more how to simplify growing to the point where I got it down to where it's pretty easy. You know, mind the bugs, and it's pretty easy to grow good weed these days, man. So that's kind of my message, and that's what I promote. I run the Dude Grow Show. Also, a huge microbe fan. So much so that I know I don't know much about microbes compared to the aquaponics community. So I love listening on this stuff.
And his show is actually kind of an inspiration for me and Marty to start our show. We had a chance to be down on his show, and we're like, man, we need to do the same thing with aquaponic cannabis education, and it really helped us get going. So thanks a lot for joining us. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask aquaponic cannabis home growers, Scotty?
You're for me to ask the aquaponic cannabis home growers?
Yeah, what would you like to know about aquaponic cannabis growers, and you know, what's different about what they do?
You know what? I'd just be interested to know so how do you all, I kind of throw my microbes on whoever's they outcompete each other, or whoever likes that pH or that temperature range or that food source that particular week or month gets, those colonies bloom. How do you all handle microbes in aquaponics? Are you the specific fish and the specific food? Are you doing that to farm specific microbes? Or how does that work? And are there bad microbes? I imagine there's ammonia and all that stuff. How do you monitor and control all that?
I'm going to kind of bow out of this question because I'm really bad here. All I've added to my system for the last probably 6 months has been fish food. I haven't been keeping up on my tests, but my plants are growing nicely and my fish don't look like they're in distress. So I haven't really been worried about that.
All right, can I recant my question then? I got one that we can all hang out in. I always thought of aquaponics as complicated. And, and that's kind of where my question came from. Damn, you have to farm specific microbes. And if your nitrogen gets out of order, then, your fish die and vice versa. And what I'm understanding is it can be as simple as having a stock tank and a tilapia in there and go from there.
Well, kind of. I mean, it's the same type of thing as people growing cannabis. Anybody can grow cannabis, but you can grow really, really good cannabis if you take the extra time and put the extra effort in. So it's the same type of thing with aquaponics. I mean, we can have super simple systems, but to get the best yield, you're going to want to keep on top of all of that stuff with your constant checks and constant monitoring.
Where do you guys think the flavor comes from? Aquaponics, Steve's wheat has a very strong, I like it, potent ponics, man. It has a potent flavor to it. I attribute that to the fish and the fish shit. Any ideas of where all that flavor comes from? Is this a consumption podcast? Are we allowed to consume, or
Yeah, go for it.
straight for YouTube? All right, cool.
I have them all day. I mean, personally,
I need it, man.
For sure.
Marty, all right, great to see you, man.
Hey, how you doing, Scotty? I mean, for me personally, I think it's the microbe diversity. I think that, if we look at like some of the studies that have come out in the past couple of years that show, the microbes populating the water column in ways that we didn't previously understand, in ways that we see in other studies that show that plants respond to different microbial presence, whether you're talking about in soil or whatever, in the root zone, the presence of certain microbes triggers terpenes and cannabinoid growth. And so I feel like it's the diversity that you get in aquaponics, especially dual root zone aquaponics, where you can incorporate soil microbes in addition to that. And just to touch on what your original question a little bit about, like breeding specific ones, I try to think of it as like engineering a system to find inoculating, but I want to at least try to have a system engineered to the point where different microbes can develop just inside the ecosystem of the system itself. And then it just gets better over time. I don't have to keep breeding. Probably the only thing that I would culture separately and continue to add would be labs. That would probably be lactobacillus.
Sorry, I was trying to. It seems like I can either be heard well or seen well. So
you look great and you sound great. That's all I know.
Does it sound okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's all right. You're good.
Okay.
It's good looking joint too. Nice work. Nice work.
Since we're bullshitting, I don't use labs, and I've always heard really good things. Or I don't know why would I use lactobacillus, man? What is that? What's the benefit?
So it's a facultative microbe, which means that it can exist in aerobic or anaerobic environments. So it's pretty has a wide application. People already use it for a lot of different stuff. So it's great for plant growth. It's great for outcompeting the microbes that you don't want. So it's specifically because it is facultative, it prefers to reproduce in anaerobic areas, which you generally want to get rid of. So the fact that they'll seek out, so they'll move through an aerobic environment looking for an anaerobic environment, break down those areas by reproducing and populating in them, and ultimately helping eliminate them. So whether you're talking about like a hydro grow or soil grows or anything, they can play a great role in just keeping your in out competing all of the microbes that you don't want. So whereas like in traditional hydro, a lot of times you're trying to like basically sterilize everything, right? Like you're cleaning out your reservoir on a regular basis, and you're trying to keep everything nice and clean and all the time so microbes don't grow. Whereas in aquaponics, you're trying to nurture that growth out and out compete anything bad, so you don't get things like root rot. So those things come out more when you have less air in your root zone. So that's why that's why I like siphon systems. They're always filling and draining, so you have that.
Yeah, and then Steve had actually asked us a question earlier that me and Marty both answered. Lactobacillus, something about what was one of the things that we have done that has had the most success. And another thing that I've really noticed is it really kills the shit out of powdery mildew, like on the spot. So there's that too.
Is that all right? I mean, that sounds like too good to be true. But does it leave residue, or what's going on with that? That sounds like that's a problem everybody has, bro.
The other thing I wanted to add to it that I don't think anybody touched on with lactobacillus is, especially if you have a diverse range of different lactobacillus species, it provides a lot of different vitamin B as a byproduct, which is a growth accelerator for the plants. So it can help the plants grow faster and heal faster as well from damage.
Hey, I got an aquaponics question, man. Can you incorporate aquaponics in your regular grow? Does it have to be strict? Like, can I take the fish, I have a stock tank out front and I've got some fish in it. Can I just take some of that water, it's fresh water, and just pour it on my plants? And if so, am I going to really see any benefit from it? Can you be like a part-time aquaponics guy?
Yeah, man. What you're describing is basically decoupled aquaponics. It's totally a thing that people do.
Yeah, we've had if you guys check out some of the talks yesterday, we had some different side-by-sides with compost and compost plus fish water, doing just those types of tests with onions. There's definitely a lot of people that are even in the soil realm that are using it to enhance their soil. And a great way for aquaculture facilities to, not have that waste go down the drain, but be able to monetize it and help, build good organic soils that are even more biodiverse than they would be with just terrestrial microbes alone.
Wait, what's it have in it? Does it have any NPK, steak and potatoes, or is it just microbes like fish poop? Whatever's coming out of your stock tank.
Is what if you wanted to break it down to an NPK, I would say it's pretty much the NPK of fish food, which is going to work out to like a 5.11 or 5.51 or something like that. Primarily nitrogen, very little phosphorus and potassium, and you're going to be missing some other stuff too, like iron is probably the one that is going to pretty much pop up regardless of, unless you have like significantly high amounts of available iron in your well water. You're probably going to run out of those in the closed loop system eventually.
So what else do y'all need to add if we're doing aquaponics? Do y'all need to add supplements?
So yes. I've always had to add iron for sure. That's always been one of the main things that I've always had to supplement, and that really balances out my system pretty well.
And where do you get iron from, by the way? Sorry, I'm gonna fix my
what is the guy? Steve knows the guy. I can't remember. I think his name is Roger. He's from Texas, isn't he, Steve? He sells he sells a couple different forms of iron that's gonna be you purchase whichever one that you need, and it's gonna be based on what your pH of your system normally runs on, and that really keeps your nitrogen uptake and all that type of stuff really in check really well.
Sorry, I get a
Roger at True Aquaponics is quite a few different options available. We also have stuff with cannabis dosing over at apmjnewts.com. If you guys are looking for stuff that has the cannabis appropriate dosing on that instead. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off.
Don't mind me, man. I'm the guy that's always hogging the conversation, so I'm trying to shut up.
Oh, no. That's why we like having you.
It's not what everybody says. Hey guys, will you give me just a minute? I'm going to try to work on. I'm going to set my video up a bit better. My main
Sure.
camera.
Yeah, man, no worries. So what questions do the panelists have for some of the other home growers? We'd love to hear from questions maybe that you guys have for some of the other maybe problems that you guys would like to have an answer to from some of the other panelists.
So Doug from Aquaponics Cannabis, how has not dual root zone, I'm sorry, you said you do deep water culture, right? How has that done for you?
So right now I have it currently, I have 3 27-gallon totes set up, and each one has 2 6-inch net pots in it with obviously a grow media. I prefer to use pea gravel when I do my grow media in there. And then basically I have 2 air stones that go under each one, and then I'm constantly cycling the water right through my biofilter, and then right into each one of the 27-gallon totes in a line. And then it drains right back in, fresh, clean water right back into the system. As far as the DWC that I have set up currently. So far, it's been working amazing. I've noticed a lot faster growth over time than what I had with my Dutch bucket setup. So I'm still playing with it, still testing things out. Obviously, I have to monitor each 27-gallon totes water on top of the fish's water. So that's something that I've noticed is a little bit of a headache, but normally they're not even off by maybe a little bit, but otherwise they've been doing fantastic.
Anybody else have a question for the other panelists?
Hey, was my technical difficulties okay? You able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Tell me about, I heard DWC, deep water culture, and how's that working with aquaponics? I'm kind of interested in that. And is it passive? Is it active? They're using, a lot of bubbles. I don't know. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works? How you're having success with it?
Yeah, so I have it set up as a constant flow rate, so it's always cycling 24/7. So basically, I have 3 different lines set up for each 27-gallon tote. I have it set up at a higher pressure or higher PSI for my pump. So as it's going, it's blasting the water in, which causes the bubbles, obviously. And then I have 2 air stones under or I have 1 air stone under each single pot. So that way each pot has its own oxygen. So that way it's always bubbling right there for them. And then it just cycles back through, and it's a constant cycle loop. So the only thing that I worry about is obviously if something goes wrong in one of the totes, it could go wrong in all the totes. So I always monitor each tote individually on top of the fish, the water from the fish.
That makes sense. And on a scale from 1 to 10, how hard is it to maintain?
I would say I would give it like a 4 or 5. 4 or 5, just because of the constant monitoring of the water in each tote is it can be a little hectic for some people and a little time consuming if you don't have the time to check it. But otherwise, it's not too complicated to set up. It's just like a traditional DWC. I just have it set up to where it's a constant flow. So it's always going to have a current going through it. It's always going to be constantly feeding new water with constant oxygen. So that way the plant and the roots have constant oxygen for the most part.
Beautiful. How long you been running it? You got it dialed in?
So I've been running it for about 4 months, about 5 months now. I would say I have it pretty dialed in. There's not too much of a difference between each tote. Is about the same parts per million for a lot of the stuff. And then it matches up fairly close to the actual tank itself. So I have it pretty dialed in as of right now. So this is obviously my first grow on it that I have going right now. And then hopefully by my next grow, I shouldn't have to mess with any of the levels at all, just monitoring them.
And you said you've done DWC before, like traditional hydro DWC? Is that what you're saying?
No, I've not done traditional DWC for hydro. It's set up just like a traditional DWC system would be set up.
Okay, gotcha. So this is your first time growing at all then?
No, so not my first time growing at all, just first time growing with a DWC type setup.
What made you decide to take the leap in aquaponics?
Well, so I've always been really big into fish. Obviously, that's been a big part of it. And then obviously I was just doing some research and I came across something one day and it was like the next revolutionary future that's going to save the world or something like that. It really dragged me in and I was like, oh, what is this? And then I went down the wormhole figuring out what aquaponics was. Really went down the wormhole, like looking at like the commercial grows that people have set up, Potnick's going through his stuff back in the day. And just kind of really immersing myself in it and trying to figure out as much as I possibly can with already knowing how to fish, do all that type of stuff, and just seeing basically how I can do it in a more organic way that's going to be a lot better, more beneficial. And then you can do it at a smaller scale all the way up to a large scale and not have to really worry about too many differences besides just monitoring levels and everything. So I thought it was just a great setup and I liked how it was mostly organic and that there wasn't too much to it when it came down to it.
Have you grown other ways?
I have done soil. I've done soil in the past. Mostly cocoa when I did do soil, but yeah, I just didn't do a whole lot with soil besides just obviously growing in soil. Didn't really get into it that much, just
Sure.
because aquaponics really caught my attention.
I was just asking because I want to know, it's all about quality and flavor. I know when I hook up with Steve, he's got amazingly flavorful weed. Do you find it a different quality of your end product? And I guess that's a question for all you aquaponics growers, but are you find putting it up against any kind of
Is centered around the water that comes from the aquaponic system. So we're feeding, all that fish shit to all of our soil plants. And what we've seen and what we've noticed is that, I can have a clone of one strain in a media bed right next to the same clone in soil, being fed that fish shit and all that good stuff. And in the media bed that's just the fish shit, we'll have a higher concentration of terpenes. And then in the soil, it won't have as much of a concentration. The percentage will be a little bit lower, but the diversity of terpenes is more prevalent, which is kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of myself about about Steve's weed, man.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us for the Homegrown Growers panel. We have next up, we'll have the Craft Growers panel momentarily. But why don't we give everybody a chance to tell everybody how they can find out more about their growing and their different grow methods. Why don't we start with Fishy Buds?
I'm just on Instagram, so feel free to follow me at Fishy Buds.
Awesome. What about you, Aquaponics Cannabis?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram as well. Aquaponics Cannabis is my name on Instagram. And then I also am on TikTok as well, but TikTok doesn't really like me a whole lot, so I haven't been able to post a whole lot because every time it gets taken down. So that's just one of those things. But I'm Aquaponics Cannabis on both.
What about you? What about you, Brain Grow?
So I got some videos on YouTube that they're pretty old by this point, but you can always go check those out, I guess. That's an option, but mostly you can find me on Instagram with these guys. It's going to be BRAYNE_GRO, and always posting stuff about what I'm doing usually, which is mostly more in the realm of growing mushrooms and Trichocereus cacti.
Awesome. And Scotty, how can people find out more about you and your awesomeness?
I don't know about that, man, but I can't even use a camera. But realgrowers.com is my business where I do microbes. I do Real Growers Recharge, and the Dude Grow Show is where I love to hang out and learn in public how to grow really good weed. So Steve's over there hanging out and help me out with the aquaponics questions. So if you want to check it out, it's at dudegrows.com, at Dude Grows on Instagram. How about that?
And Recharge is great too for cycling your new aquaponic systems to get all those cycling bacteria. It works really awesome for that. We use it quite regularly, and Scotty actually has donated some to different schools we've worked with out in California and other stuff. So shout out to Scotty and all the other stuff that he does behind the scenes to help the community on the aquaponics side, especially education.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. You've been a huge asset to our community as well. So I appreciate it.
And you guys are welcome to hang out for the next panel, but we're going to move on. I appreciate everybody coming on. We're going to move on to the craft growers panel now with Jordan Rivers going to be helping us moderate this one. And we're going to have Fumidor and Josh Rutherford and Thomas on the panel with us from I'm sorry, tell me the name of, I don't want to mispronounce the name of your farm. It's Little River Aquaponics, correct? Yep. I had a chance to go hang out and see his farm the other day, and I thought it was really awesome. And all three of these guys do craft scale cannabis, under 3,000 feet, 5,000 square feet. Not huge grows, but enough to grow a decent amount of flower, seed production. So I thought it'd be great to get them on and have some other knowledgeable people on to talk about it. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, hey, can I hang out, man? I want to hear what Josh Rutherford has to say.
Hell yeah. We're happy to have it.
All right. Sounds good, man.
So why don't we kick things off with, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself there, Jordan? You're taking time off of your vacation. I really much appreciate it.
Oh, I couldn't miss this, man. Thanks for having me, Steve. I am out here in Hawaii. The sun just set. It was nice and bright a minute ago, but it looks like the light's going to work. But we're broadcasting live from Molokai, so that's pretty fun. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Seems
Awesome.
like the connection's pretty stable. What's up, Marty? A good friend as well. Fumidor, good to see you. Oh, and Dutch Blooms as well, amazing. Hi, everybody. Good evening. So happy to be here at the second annual virtual Aquaponics Cannabis Conference. I, of course, am Jordan River, host of Growcast Podcast. Again, broadcasting from Molokai, pretty beautiful. And I'm honored, Steve, to be here hosting the Craft Grown panel with several luminary members, former guests and new faces. So really excited. We're going to discuss growing strategies and techniques at the craft grow scale, as well as cultivation struggles, challenges, how to overcome those challenges, and all that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's introduce today's guests. Maybe we'll just go down the line and have you tell a little bit about yourself. We'll start with the order of my screen. But let's jump right in. Should we introduce Marty as well, or what do you think, Steve? Did he already do his introductions there?
It's up to Marty if he wants to do it now, or if you want to do it in your talk after.
I never get bored of hearing about Marty. How you been, man?
I'm good. I introduced myself for the last panel, and my talk's coming up next. So I'll donate my time to catching us up.
Fantastic. How's it going, Thomas? I'm sorry, your last name Balin. Forgive me.
Balin, yeah.
Yeah, good to meet you, Thomas Balin. How are you? And if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself and your facility.
Yeah, so we're based out of Norman, Oklahoma, right in the heartland. And we're an aquaponics farm. We've been around since 2014. I started working there around 2015. And, with the owner of the place, Steve, kind of took a different Steve, took the reins of the place and started doing vegetables commercially. So 2018 rolls around, legalization passes, and naturally, we moved part of our farm's focus into cannabis production. So our main greenhouse, we're kind of, as someone was mentioning earlier, like a decoupled system. We have a bunch of living soil beds that we feed with the wastewater from the aquaponic system, and we still do like vegetables and herbs, flowers, all kinds of stuff around the farm. So.
Awesome, man. Big fan of the veggies. Everyone knows over at VeggieCast. Glad to have you, Thomas. Let's see here. Fumidor, my man, host of Fumidor and the Flavors. How you been, man?
Good.
Tell
Good,
everyone.
mate.
Tell everyone what's up.
What's up is this conference was great. I was listening to most of it here behind the scenes. We got to listen to some absolute legends, Coot and Dr. Faust and all kinds of folks. This is going to be a great panel too, I'm sure. I have my own channel. We like to have, in fact, I was just describing it to Dr. Faust. I was saying it's like a pub that's frequented by all your smartest grow friends, basically. So we pretty much have like, Clackamas Coot comes on, Potent comes on, all kinds of folks. Mr. Toad came on the other day, Lemon Hoko, stuff like that. So we have a very long form, pleasant kind of low key discussion. So I like to say we like to take the weed seriously. We don't take ourselves too seriously. So we get to kind of just goof off and talk for a few hours, and you'd be surprised the amount of insights that will come out in literally like the second or third hour of talking about a goofy thing. But anyway, cheers, folks. Thanks for having me. Hope you guys join my show one of these days. Cheers.
Yeah, I thought I was a weed snob until Fumi busted out the weed chopsticks.
Yep.
I haven't felt like
you get an honorary pair. Well, as soon as you basically join the panel, we send you some weed chopsticks. That's how it is.
Gotcha.
Fucking love it. Fumidor and the Flavors, everybody.
Cheers, buddy.
Dutch Blooms, what's
Fumi?
up, my man? How you doing, Joshua Rutherford?
Good, man. How are you guys doing?
Excellent, excellent. Good to see you again. For the introduction purposes, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on.
Yeah, I am. It's good to see you, Scotty.
What's up, brother?
Scotty actually got to come visit me.
Fuck
I
yeah.
want to say it was 2017, 2018.
It was a while ago,
A
man.
lot,
It was
like when I first
beautiful,
got my
man.
farm
Yeah.
started, like it would be cool to give you a little tour of what's going on now, because it's been a lot of hard work and a lot of stuff. So I have a commercial grow in Washington State. It's just me, and I kind of started out trying to grow for to put product to market, and realize that wasn't my niche. And so now I'm a breeder, and I just kind of work through genetics. I grow in living soil, and I use aquaponics, aquaponic water, remineralized, or fish poop remineralized in my systems. And yeah, so I grow outdoor and greenhouse and indoor, and kind of mix it all up. And I also put on a conference and teach folks, that I bring in speakers that teach folks about regenerative cannabis. So stoked to be a part of this wonderful group.
Sweet, man. Got the packs going. I saw Marty just held one up there.
Yeah,
Sick.
yeah.
Love
Yep.
that you're breeding.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then I can't leave out, sweet. And of course, can't leave out Scotty. We've never met before, man. Good to officially meet you here. I know you had spoken to my producer, Rob, in the past, but how's it going, man?
Yeah,
It's good to meet you.
It is great, man. I'm sorry I'm so slack. I normally rely on my producer Guru to keep everything running. But
Dude,
yeah, great to be here, man.
I just got to say before we get started, I've talked about it on the show. Love the Recharge, man. Love what you're doing with Recharge. Keep
Thank
up
you
the
so
great work.
much,
Wonderful
man.
product. Great blend you have there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was a blessing for me in my life.
Cool,
It
man.
really was.
Glad to have you here on the panel, man.
Thanks. I'm gonna shut up and listen, man.
We're not here just to talk about microbes, of course. We are here to talk about that and much more. Craft level aquaponics growing. So again, what I really want to focus on are some of the techniques that you guys use at your scale and with your designs, the highest leverage techniques, and then also some of the challenges that you face and how you overcome them. Maybe I'll just kind of bounce around a little bit question to question. But let's go with Marty first. First of all, what type of design are you running with your aquaponic system, if you just don't mind reminding people?
Sure, I do. I do all media beds with two root zone pots. So right now the indoor has more long style trough media beds, and the greenhouse is a little bit larger and deeper beds for larger plants. So the indoor has 5-gallon pots. The outdoor has 15-gallon dual root zone pots. They both have, somewhere between 600 to 800 gallons of water at any particular time, and fairly low stocking density with koi. And that's been sort of the accumulation of a number of different systems I built along the way. So they all have external siphons. So the indoor has 4 beds, 1 siphon per 2 beds. So there's 2 siphons on there. And then the outdoor, each bed has its own siphon that runs independently, and they all have water input. So, so yeah, that's kind of the basic setup.
So is this a design that you had worked on other ones and kind of settled on as optimal, or is this the first aquaponic design that you started with?
No, it's probably like my 10th different system. I built a number of them over probably 8 years or so. And so, I did, timers and different things along the way. So just like accumulation of different stuff. Like I learned how to make the loop siphons or U siphons and underset siphon systems. And then, sort of built out the space. I had to move, regulations sort of kicked me out of my spot. We had to build again. So some of that is just readapting to the space that I'm in, but mostly it's just an accumulation of everything I learned along the way.
If you had to single out one thing as the biggest game changer for that system that you currently have installed, maybe if you could go back to yourself, like X amount of years ago, and kick yourself in the butt and change one thing, what do you think would be the biggest factor in the success of your current system?
I think probably the main thing I would say would be siphon systems, like having the water fluctuation in the bed as opposed to like a constant height, or any way that you can achieve as many sort of diaphragm actions for that water to push air out and pull fresh air in when it goes back out. That would have been, I guess, getting over my initial fear of working with siphons, because I think I tried timers and constant flow systems before I went to siphons, and that probably the only probably the most drastic difference in growth rate and health of plants was implementing a siphon system.
Interesting. That siphon system, for a lay person like me, again, designed to keep the system clean, designed to keep the system oxygenated, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it means that the media beds are always filling up to a point and then draining out and filling up and draining out, as opposed to a constant height where the water is just filling up to an overflow and is constantly has water left in the bottom. So that action of the water dropping down and moving back up creates a diaphragm that forces air in and out of the root zone of your plant. So it constantly gives fresh air.
I would like to talk about that for a second. I've been trying to solve that problem with my hempy buckets, or a dual root zone bucket. And I find that if I'm, kind of trying to find a super simple way to leave my plants alone for a few days. So I try to hook them up to like a controller unit, almost like, if you can remember the water farm systems, but keep a constant level in the buckets. And I notice performance goes way down when you have the what are you calling it? The siphoning, as to where it's going up and down. Yeah. Even just in the course of a day, I find that it's a huge performance. I don't know if it's the air gap changing, and I'd love to try to learn from y'all.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that action that we're just talking about. I've even found that the more often that you can, the faster they fill and drain. So having a well-tuned siphon that starts and stops relatively quickly, because there's actually a pretty wide range of, your siphon could trickle on and take a long time to start, or it could have a ton of pressure, almost too much input, and it take sort of sputters at the end and take a long time to turn off. So either one of those extends the amount of time it takes for your siphon, your total cycle to go. So right now on my indoor beds and my outdoor beds both, I try to shoot for less than 10 minutes on a full fill and drain all the way.
Got it.
I find that to be the best.
Wow, so it's like constantly rising, ebbing and flowing, sort of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is fascinating. It's not something that I imagined when I thought of aquaponic grows. Something that I want to ask, I think, everyone on this panel: what type of microbes are you utilizing? And a follow-up question: what type of concerns do you have integrating those with the fish? Marty? I wanted to, so just to be clear, I was going to ask you and then also ask everyone on the panel.
Okay.
So that'll be, yes.
So the microbes that I specifically add in would be labs. I have messed around with some other inoculants from T-Lab. Shout out to them in Arcata. They make a variety of different inoculants that you can sort of brew into tea and then add in. So horsetail and stinging nettle ferment. So I try to add both nutrients and microbes at the same time by doing ferments most of the time. I feed my fish Bokashi brand about twice a week or so. So not full on all the time, like that's their only food input. But I do feed them that, where I don't feed them anything else that day. They love to eat it, and it just helps keep all of those healthy microbes in the system all the time. So those are the only things that where I would add microbes specifically. I have used in the past and had good success with. I just have never done it again. There's a company here actually in the Rogue Valley called NPK Systems that make, and he's been on the podcast before as well, but they make specific veg and bloom mixes of inoculants that are just dry powder you can mix into your, you can, I mix them into my dual root zone and then water them in, which has been my preference for inoculating anything I want to go to be a soil microbe, which most of your inoculants on the market these days are for soil. So those I try to make sure I go right into the dual root zone. But labs, I always make sure to get some of them directly into the media beds to help break down solids. And then the Bokashi brands of the fish help keeps my water clarity excellent. You can, if you ever have like somebody coming over for a tour, it's always good to throw some Bokashi brand in a few hours before, and it'll just clear your water right up. So it's a great water clarifier. Even if you just have a fish tank, it's great.
And these ferments, these microbial inputs, no problems with the fish. Not even concerned about too much harming the fish.
I find a little goes a long way. I guess I don't do anything in huge doses for one thing, and then just watching out for certain inputs like yucca, for instance. You want to make sure that you avoid because it's lethal to fish. So even in small amounts. So there are a couple of inputs like that, but for the most part, even in your dual root zone, you could use it if you were really careful because it's designed to stay out of your water table at all times. But there's really no point, in my opinion, in using it because you have a variety of other inputs to choose from. But for the most part, anything you can use in living soil that's not toxic to fish, you can put in your dual root zone pretty safe.
Super, super cool. Let's bounce around here a little bit. We'll talk to Thomas next. Thomas, what's going on, man? You mentioned your facility a second ago. Maybe you want to catch us up on just quickly the type of design you're using. Then I got some questions for you.
Sure, yeah. So our system, the aquaponic system, is a 9,000 gallon Nelson and Pate system with 2 deep water culture, like 1,500 gallon tanks, floating rafts. And then we also have 2 trough style media beds that we, kind of put in unison with our living soil beds or next to them. Our whole facility, everything we grow is sun grown. We use supplemental lighting, but for the most part, everything is sun grown. And
wow,
yeah,
that's really cool, man. That sun grown aquaponics has got to taste great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, everything, is even the basil, the lettuce, anything that comes out of there, it tastes wonderful.
I'd imagine so. Is there anything that makes your facility particularly unique, or do you look at other aquaponics facilities and say, hey, we do that a little bit different?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really know anyone else that was doing aquaponics on any sort of scale. We've kind of been isolated in that way. So it's been really interesting this weekend, kind of watching and listening to everyone and their experiences with it. Yeah, but I mean, I feel like we're all kind of barking up the same tree in a way. Yeah.
You're already on an island here doing the aquaponics thing, meaning that it's such a rare style to begin with. I think that's what makes it so fascinating is we see the field developing right before our eyes.
Right.
So that's really cool as somebody watching from the outside. What type of fish are you using and what are you feeding them?
Yeah, we're using a Nile River tilapia, and then we feed them, we give them, the greens that we grow in the system as often as we can. And then we have just an organic fish food that we feed them as well. I've heard over the weekend and talking to Steve a little bit, you know, a variety of different things that we could be feeding them. You know, someone mentioned giving them the fan leaves off our plants. I haven't tried anything like that yet. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing.
It's going to be some healthy fish.
Yeah, they're some happy fish.
Yeah, no doubt. Microbial inputs. Are you implementing any? And seeing as how you grow multiple crops, I'm sure that puts you in a different position for when you're applying things like microbes, which can oftentimes be very plant specific.
Sure, yeah. So you know, one of our focuses is we try to eliminate waste streams as much as we can. And one of the big ones, you know, is, you know, if you're not eating them, you're ending up with a bunch of fish that just over time they die or whatever. So we ferment those and we use that FAA in like our soil regimen. That's not going back in the water. I'm sure we could. I mean, you can eat the stuff. I don't know if it'd be harmful to the fish at all, but you know, we use the fermented fish as much as we can in the garden spaces.
Wow.
And then we use a product from Microbial hydroponics. It's just microbe lift. You know, we use that occasionally in our bioreactor just to make sure everything's, you know, functioning properly. But yeah, and then, you know, fermented plant juices as well. We use that.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
A lot of ferments. It sounds like you guys use. That's super neat. And then the microbe life guys, of course, that's really cool.
Oh, they're wonderful. Yeah, they make some pretty good products.
Totally. Okay, let's bounce around again here, just for the sake of time. Fumidor, man, I didn't even know you were an aquaponics grower. How did I not know that?
I think I'm playing the role of devil's advocate tonight, basically.
You snuck in.
I think I'm the outsider looking in. Yeah, man, I snuck in. I don't know, someone left the door open and I got in. But I'm fascinated by this stuff, candidly. You know, when I hear this, you were talking about outsiders looking in, and I was thinking, oh, what am I going to talk about this? And actually, that's kind of my interest in aquaponics, honestly, is academic. Honestly, you know, I'm curious about it basically more than anything because I'm not actively growing and I'm not planning to actively grow aquaponically right now, but I'm honestly really curious about it. Every time I hear Paul Stamets talk about, and a lot of people here talk, you know, they know Paul Stamets. If you don't know Paul Stamets, he's the mushroom guy, right? He does a whole lot of legal mushroom stuff with, you know, edible mushrooms and everything, but he talks about psychedelic mushrooms. He's been on Joe Rogan and everything else. And when you dig into some of the stuff he talks about, and it's legit what he talks about stuff like colonizing asteroids with oyster mushrooms. And when you first hear that, if I say that now, you think to yourself, you know, Fumidor, this guy that's on his show is a lunatic. But you actually go and talk about, there's an article in Scientific American, I think from last month, where they're talking to Paul Stamets about literally colonizing asteroids with oyster mushrooms and other things. And I think to myself, like things like this ever ebbing and flowing dual root zone that Marty and Steve talk about, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to have on space stations and on Mars. You know, the antiquated aquaponics didn't really work very well, you know, like the tomatoes and everything else. People remember eating that stuff at Disneyland or whatever. It tasted like paper. But this stuff, the weed smokes like weed, the food smoke, you know, it eats like food, you know what I mean? Like it's legit. And it's fascinating when I think about that. Like you said, Marty was talking about this ever ebbing and flowing tide in that dual root zone. That's kind of the difference between, that's why I'm most fascinated by this kind of stuff. And I'm always rapturously curious to listen to, you know, Marty talk. Like, he doesn't grow anything like I grow, you know, but I'm curious to hear how he talks. So anyway, I'll stop babbling, but I'm very curious about that kind of stuff.
No, man, absolutely love it. In fact, I also just want to shout out your breeding work, of course. One thing that's really cool to see, you know, you hooking up with these guys, and you must love this, is that you get to breed, you know, in work in the medium you're working with, and then you give these guys and you see what they get to do in an aquaponic setting. I know that's exciting to see it in any other setting, let alone, you know, Steve Reisner's or Marty's.
It's the only, you know, everyone, how do I say this? You only really do something because I think most people do something because they think it's the best way to do things. You know, like people that buy Chevys, they think Chevys are the best. I don't buy a Chevy, but you know what I mean? Like people basically think they're doing something the best. I think that the system that I work is the best way that I could run it. I don't think there's somebody else doing something better. Of course, I think that way because I'm doing it that way, right? Otherwise, I'd change it. But there's one system that I think probably could add yield and flavor, and it is basically this dual root zone aquaponics, because there's just this, basically I'm running essentially a modified Coots mix, I guess, to avoid the suspense, but I think adding that whole level of the like aquatic microbes, because life evolved first in the ocean, literally in water, I think that just adds so much potentially to the whole ball game. It makes it very interesting. Anyway,
that's true, man. Love it. Dutch blooms. Oh, go ahead. So someone want to jump in there? Thought I heard something.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, man, if you're what's up, Cheepador, by the way, man. It's great to see you,
Hey,
brother.
man. Nice to see you,
Yeah,
man. We met at the old cannabis club, man. Cheers.
and it was great, man. I've seen you on Bracing Organics and
Right.
stuff. I'm a fan, dude.
I was just gonna say, Scotty. A lot of people ask me on my website. I have a website. I don't mean to shout it out because nobody's been doing that. But anyway, I have a coupon code, whatever. And people ask, "Oh, so what's this Uncle Trip thing?" And I'm like, "Oh, you gotta know. You gotta know. That's the Uncle Trip. This is the Uncle Trip comes from
brother,
somebody
man.
that he might know. Basically, you know him
Yeah,
well.
that's my shady brother, man.
So
He
he gets
may or
away
may
with stuff
not be
sometimes,
real.
man. What are you gonna do?
Hey, but I know you grow dank as fuck weed. If
Thank
you're
you.
so you do the Coots mix. That's some great flavor coming from all that organics. Can he incorporate any aspects of aquaponics rather?
I think so.
to
I think you could just
diversify
honestly
the
water
micro-
in the fish shit water. You know,
That-
honestly,
that's
like
what
every
I'm
time you do an
thinking.
aquarium change, I think you just water that in. You know, and
Yeah.
I'm annoyed that I don't have aquariums right now to try it. There's no reason why you couldn't do it. You know,
Dude,
Right.
you live in Portland. You really just need to go down to Home Depot and get yourself a little, $50 pond and pick up a couple fish and
throw some
then
goldfish in there.
fill it up with some water, get them in there, and then all of a sudden, 10 days later, you got to change that water out.
That's it. There you
You
go.
know?
Let's do it.
It is true, man. We got a stock tank, like a 200-gallon stock tank, and put a little pond kind of aerator, and we did need some kind of sterilizer, UV sterilizer, but a few $100, and we had a big old, I think it was a tilapia, but living in there, and it's kind of cool, man.
Hmm.
It's kind of cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it turns out birds will steal fish.
Oh, they love fish, man. Who doesn't love fish? I don't understand. I'll hear people say like they don't like fish. I'm like, man, you wouldn't survive in the wild. A bird will eat it.
Yeah.
A bear will eat it.
Oh.
You won't.
Oh, raccoon, awesome.
But it was easy to do. It produced a decent amount of fish waste, I guess is what I'm saying. Just a couple fish in a 200-gallon tank. You were always, pulling it. It produced a decent amount of fish shit.
Marty, did you have something you wanted to throw in there? I saw you on mute.
Oh yeah, so just I actually have, if you look at on my Instagram or on my YouTube, I did living soil beds with Coot's Mix watered with aquaponics. So if you're interested, I can shoot you some pics. Or actually, I'm coming up right after this panel. You'll see some pictures of it then as well.
Sweet.
Have you done a comparison of with and without? Do you find there's an added, is it worth the extra effort?
To do the aquaponics, yeah, I was.
Well, I mean, aquaponic, you did Coots Mix compared to Coots Mix with aquaponics.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's the same work at that point, just because I already had an aquaponic system, so all I had to do was water it with something else. So at one,
Right.
we watered with well water in, same cuts, and we grew the same cut in aquaponics. So I think it was Starfighter OG, if I remember right. And it was better across the board, flavor, yield, everything.
Yeah, I bet, man. I would believe that.
Yeah, Steve has me sold on that maximum stimulation of that immune system. Dutch Blooms, forgive me if you already caught us. I am very high right now, after all.
You should.
What do you? How are you growing now? How many ways have you grown? What's up with your growing strategy?
Well, so I think I've grown a lot of ways. I've done a lot with aquaponics, and I don't right now have a traditional aquaponics setup where I'm doing dual root zone, but I have 4 or 5 small aquaponics systems on my property. And I was talking earlier, what I do is I harvest the fish poop out of the filter, and then I put it in a brewer and I re-brew it, and then I use that as an inoculant into my compost, or I actually make another compost tea or extract out of it and apply those to my beds, which are essentially Coots Mix type beds, 100%, when I started them, if you will. One thing that historically I've done, and I just think is so fucking cool of that, I can't say enough why I think everyone growing weed, period, should have some sort of small aquaponic system. It can really be as simple, like Scotty was saying, stock tank, a fucking 5-gallon bucket full of rocks with the holes in the bottom that you pump the water. You can be so simple just to get that nutrient exchange. And it's almost fucking free nutrients that are there all the time when you have little babies. when you do cuttings. Like I forgot that I used to do this when I had my veggie garden in Minnesota. I would just have all the water flowing. So at times, and I could just throw a plant here, bare root, stick it in a flowing water, not worry about it, and come back the next day, and it would like be thriving because there's so much nutrient and air exchange. It's actually radical. And I still use this technique in funny ways in my garden. Like, for instance, I had a whole field of very small plants that I'm breeding and I'm looking at, and they were so small that they hadn't really dug in and gotten super into the ground. And I kind of started, and they were finished. You know, I was making selections, and I was like, so I kind of take a cutting, and I put that cutting in the cloner, and I'm gonna you know, get some roots on it, and then I'm gonna re-veg the thing, and then I want a second chance at it. So I you know, typically I'll get a shovel in there, and I'll kind of be really careful, and then I'll repot it. And I had a lot of trouble with that, but I remembered my old aquaponic technique, and I just kind of started pulling these plants out, and I'm like, fuck, I got a good solid taproot. And so I just knocked all that soil off, and then I threw it in my aquaponics system, just in the moving water overnight. And I knew that like just being in the aquaponic water overnight was going to stimulate enough nutrients and enough new root growth that I could put it then back into soil, and it would regenerate and do that much better. And that's like a technique that I just learned over doing that, because there really is something about the massive oxygen water exchange that's happening in that system. And just, you know, just there's so many times that you get caught up and you're like, man, I think I could use a little more nitrogen when you got some starts or some baby plants. You know, there you go. You just have a little bucket you can dip in. Boom. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to pH it. It's there when in a quick pinch. You know, Scotty was talking about when he was leaving out of town. I used to do that dirty trick where I'd grab a saucer, you know, sit the pot in the saucer and kind of like overfill it and run out of town for a couple days, you know. But I don't know. It's an invaluable tool, and you can be as creative as you want to with it, in my mind.
Wow. So as someone who's tried all these different styles and settled on aquaponics, do you think that it's about and I'm sure the answer is that it's an amalgam of things, it's the combination, right? But do you think that, like you said, is it about the microbial stimulation that makes this process superior? Is it about the nutrient cycling, the oxygenation? What in your opinion?
It's the addition of for me, it's the addition of the aquatic microbes, because you can achieve full nutrient range many ways. But there's this thing that I don't understand, that we as humans don't understand in the microbes. You asked the question earlier, what microbes? Well, we can name a few. We can talk about lactobacillus and some different, you know, bacilli and some even fungi, but there's more that we can't tell. And all I know is that my guru, Elaine Ingham, is like, it's all about diversity, baby. And so give me a little recharge, give me a little lactobacillus, give me a little fish poop, and I'm going to dump all that into my compost tea and let those microbes fucking shit and like do their thing and make babies and become something diverse. Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, it's just they're also, whichever ones a few are going to dominate. You're going to find some that are going to dominate. They're going to like that specific pH, or they're going to like that high salt or that low salt environment. You know, but that's why there's a whole bunch of them.
Right, and so maybe next season I have a heat issue, or I have a rain incident, right? So I have a diversity of microbes that are going to like and handle that diverse experience. Is kind of the way I think about it, you know.
That does make sense. That does make sense. I want to make sure that we stay on schedule here. We can kind of move into the problems and challenges portion as I ask you folks. In fact, I'm going to throw some out to the panel, because maybe it won't be such a good idea to ask individually, but having tried different styles of cultivation, also working in the rare style of aquaponics, do you find any cultivars stand out to you in either direction? You ever run something in aquaponics and been surprised that it didn't do well? Or did you run a strain that completely got turned around in aquaponics and taken to a whole new level of expression? Anyone who has experience could chime in. I would love to hear about the strains themselves. I don't know, Thomas or Marty, if anything comes to mind.
As a breeder, I wish I could speak more to it, but I fortunately just haven't done that enough trials in the tube, you know, straight up. You know, I've heard of from other guys that do more work, you know, breeding in both ways, and they'll be like, no, we have found ones that do a little bit better with, you know, like in more traditional media bed
Wow.
systems, so,
And
but I
that's what I'm
myself, I
wondering.
haven't been able to really identify that because I haven't done the work.
That surprises me. I'd be surprised if there were strains that didn't like this type of system, but maybe I believe that, like you said, I don't have that type of experience. So if someone's made that observation, but Thomas, you have any input?
Sure, yeah. I've had a few different strains that respond, all right. I think the higher nitrogen environment, you get a lot of like exfoliation and more leaf than, some of these really prefer. I did get turned on to some strains that came from a breeder up in Southern Oregon called Massive Seeds, and they're down in the Rogue Valley. And they do absolutely incredible, both in the DWC and in media beds. And then I've noticed even, we'll take those and put them in soil, and in just the straight aquaponics medium, either DWC or media, their resin production is much higher, their flavor is much better, and the structure of the plant actually is much easier to work with. They don't get so branchy, and it's like more thicker, sturdier stalks coming out of that.
Thomas, do you do dual root zone? Sorry, you might have just said that.
We messed around with dual root zone a little bit. I haven't put a lot of thought and effort into it, mainly because we use our DWC for vegetable production primarily. But yeah, most of our cannabis production with aquaponics strictly is in media.
So I think that's like, I'm pretty, I could say pretty confidently, I think that, cannabis is an understory plant in succession, right? As we're going from desert to forest.
Yeah.
And in that, it likes a fungally dominant soil. And that's what the beauty in my mind of the dual root zone system is, because I think that like, I would think specifically that if you're going into media beds, you'll find cultivars that maybe like that. And they can take the high nitrogen, just like you say, they're bacterial dominant, but then the bulk, I think really they need that fungal in there, component, because that's just where they're from it naturally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done like dual root zone. Actually, we've done it both in the DWC and in the media beds. In the last panel, I was talking about how in soil we see like a bigger diversity of terpenes, as opposed to the media. We'll see more potency but less diversity. So we're kind of trying to find that happy medium, and they definitely respond really well to that.
Did you say you saw more potency in the media?
More potency, but less like variety.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're driving the bacterial THC dominance, and that's the same stuff that Elaine was saying. More bacteria, more THC. And when you get up into the higher carbon, higher fungal, you'll get the more diverse cannabinoids and the more diverse terpenoids.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah, I like
it's
that.
really cool that matches up with what you're seeing, man.
Yeah, that's really cool, man, because I've kind of had that observation for a while, but never really, put one to the other. So
that is wild. People are always looking for ways to drive up those ancillary cannabinoids or drive up THC, two very desirable effects. But Thomas, what about, just to go VeggieCast for a second, what about vegetables? Any vegetables? That wouldn't surprise me if you said some vegetables don't do well in an aquaponics situation, but you tell me.
Oh yeah, I've heard people have like really good success with brassicas and stuff. I'll throw some cauliflower or broccoli in there, and it just turns into like the most scraggly mess I've ever seen in my life. But
all stretched out.
What's that?
I'm sorry, all stretched out, I said.
Yeah, for sure. But like lettuce and basil, all these aromatic herbs we throw in there, they really thrive. As we were saying earlier, you got to feed them a little iron in there. Definitely in any aquaponic system you need that. But yeah, like definitely the lettuce, man, that's where it's at with those systems.
Sweet, love me some lettuce, man. Get some iceberg going, we'll be happy. What about pests? I want to hear about pests in an aquaponic situation. And do you have to worry about double pests? Like, not only have to worry about powdery mildew, but you got to worry about like fin rot. You know what I mean? Is that a thing? Maybe Tom
and my fish are both sick.
Yeah, but go ahead, Josh. I see you on mute there.
I haven't been running big media bed systems for about 10 years, but fungus gnats, like if you're not getting a good coverage on your water, fungus gnats are really easy to pop up. And aphids, I think, are a little bit easier to find a place in an aquaponics greenhouse than in a soil greenhouse. Just on the brassica. Aphids, regular aphids, not root aphids, but just regular. Yeah, I would see them on my peppers on my brassicas, like really hardcore.
Really?
Yeah.
Root aphids can be really hard to treat in aquaponics also, just because it's a very friendly environment for them, and it's hard to be able to get like direct contact with them for any sort of direct contact spray. And then obviously anything that you do spray directly into your media beds is going to get in to your fish. So that kind of a number of different suffocants are sort of ruled out at that point. So I feel like you deal with a lot of the same pests, but some more challenges in treating them. And if there's certain things you have to avoid, because then you kill all your fish, or vice versa. So, all the common pests you deal with in any other method of growing, but you are more limited in the ways in which you can treat them, which kind of just keeps you more honest, in my opinion.
Although one thing that's cool, like with those two specific, to just pop in there, like one of the solutions is nematodes, beneficial nematodes. And that while they can be challenging to apply to soil, they're very easy to apply to an aquaponic system. You just dump them in the water and they're in there and they move through the system. But with a soil system, you have to really be careful to keep them in solution and moving while you're applying, especially on a larger commercial scale where you have to move through a series of, aisles and rows and whatever. It can be a little challenging. They actually make a special bucket that you got to buy, a nematode bucket, to keep them distributed in your deal, so.
Elaine talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
That in traditional soil, they pretty much are moving vertically almost primarily. They don't necessarily spread out horizontally, but in an aquaponic system, especially if you have, again, like a siphon system or a fluctuating water system where the water's going out when it fills and down the drain when it comes in, it allows them to travel a little bit more and populate those systems a little better and get you better coverage than what you'd have to basically physically walk around and achieve the same coverage by literally spraying everywhere you wanted it to go.
So fascinating.
Vertically in soil.
That makes so much sense. It's a more efficient microbe delivery system in general when you talk about microbes like nematodes. That makes perfect sense because, again, if you're putting it into a medium, you're worrying about it drying out, you're worrying about the direction it moves, as you already mentioned. And then when you take a look at aquaponics, it's just circulating. I've never realized that it's a more effective delivery system for some of these microbes.
And that just inspired me. If I could just hop in on this kind of thing that Steve and I had noticed in discussion in car time with Elaine, in aquaponic systems, everyone uses propeller driven pumps to drive their systems. And they literally are chopping up the microbes as they're moving through the water. When I talk with Elaine and we talk about making compost tea and delivering compost tea, we have very specific equipment that needs to be dialed down to under 100 PSI, 90 PSI. We use diaphragm pumps so that they're not chopping the biology. But in an aquaponic system, it has so much biology just jamming through there. It doesn't matter if you're slicing and dicing them. It's kind of the theory and where we've gone to just kind of emphasize your point, that it's such a good delivery system of the biology that you can literally be killing them with the pump, that you're using to move the water, and it's still good,
Jeez. It's a wild, again, as someone who is a lay person grower, aquaponics is all wizardry to me. That's why I'm moderator of this panel and not on, you know what I mean? It's all wizardry to me, but I absolutely love hearing about it. I don't want to leave, you kind of alluded to it, Dutch Blooms, but maybe we can tap back on it. You're talking about microbial inputs and what you use. Brewed fish poop sounds like your main thing. Are you using any store-bought formulated microbial inputs that you'd like to? None.
I'm not. I guess not really. I mean,
you said labs. You said this all homebrew.
I've been formulating my own that you could buy on my store. So I mean, but they're not store bought. Yeah. So I've been fucking around with some shit, and we just dropped some products. So I didn't want to like, be that sales pitchy, but yeah, I do fuck around with some lactobacillus and some aloe powder and coconut powder, coconut sugar, Peruvian cacao, matcha. We're doing some stuff like that, and a saponin tea. But yeah, the bulk of my microbes are in my compost. And so, like I said, I will use the fish poop to make it. But then every time I make a new compost pile, I also take the brew I take the last compost pile, make a brew, and inoculate it with that biology. So I'm kind of like a sourdough starter, keeping the groove going.
Fuck yeah. Love it. Fucking love it, man. Fumi, formulated microbe inputs. What are you using in your garden?
You don't want to know what I'm laughing about in the chat.
You're
I don't actually use
the chat, dude. You're making me laugh.
I don't use formulated microbe inputs. So I'll play the role of devil's advocate, basically. Not intentionally, but I guess everybody has to have every elbow has a sharp corner or something. I don't know. Basically, I like to use good worm compost, pretty much, and so or vermicompost, I guess you'd say. I guess I'm a little bit high right now. So I'm lucky in the neighborhood. Basically, Clackamas Coot always talks about this. There's this one guy. There's a few around the country, but there's a few really good vermicompost producers. There's this one up here. Northwest Redworms is the one that I happen to use. You can basically go there, and it's like a grocery store. You can walk in and buy some tomatoes. You can basically go up to him, and in my case, get a few buckets. Basically, that's all you really need. Vermicompost, and mix it into your soil, or mix it into your soilless mix, and create something that has something approaching like an actual, I guess I'm rhyming, soul or something. I don't know. Basically, it becomes a form of a soil that is filled with things that science has yet to quantify. Many of those microbes can't be cultured on a slide. They haven't been identified by any particular microbiologist. I mean, there's all kinds of critters. There's what do you even call them now? I don't even know. There's all the different trophic layers, right? They're little teeny tiny. I mean, obviously viruses and bacteria and nematodes and archaea and so on. But then all the other critters that eat them, all the nematodes and everything else. I mean, I don't even know that all the nematodes have been quantified in good worm castings. So long story short, I think literally adding a good, let's say, bucket of worm castings onto your grow, wherever it is, that is just an order of magnitude more microbes, I would say, than an equivalent amount of literally anything else. And I think those are the things that are endemic to the environment. So if you wanted to, what's the metaphor? I don't know. If you wanted plants that are going to live heartily in your yard without watering, you'd want native plants, right? And so if you want something that's going to live with your soil or live with your plants, you'd want microbes that basically live in soil, vermicompost. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's just I don't know. It's the obvious choice, I feel like, but it's the choice that a lot of people don't choose for I don't even know what reason. It's right in front of you, like it's in the soil. I don't know.
Love it.
Anyway.
So you were applying the vermicompost, or I'm sorry, go ahead, Scotty.
I just said I second castings. I use super boring cocoa, and pretty much the only trick I have is throwing some castings in there, man. And I do notice a little bit of fresh top dressing or good quality earthworm castings makes a huge difference, man. So
it's like garlic powder, you throw it if you're going to throw in one thing.
That's it. People wonder what's that extra flavor, and you might not want to tell them it's garlic and also butter.
Do you brew it though, Fumi, or do you just throw it in with your mixed top dressing?
Not anymore. I used to. Honestly, I used to do teas, and frankly, I don't have a problem with teas. I used to have really good luck with teas, but I have just honestly, I don't know. I succumbed to the whole Coot simplicity method. He basically cuts things away like a knife, and just why is this complicated thing there? Why is that complicated thing there? Once you cut it away, you realize it was there for no reason. Why not just add it to the dirt? Like if you want it on the dirt, why not just literally put it on the dirt? Like how could I possibly be a better tea brewer to somehow out-evolve, how do I say this? Out-evolve the microbial evolution. How do I say this? How could I possibly out-evolve evolution? Basically is what I'm trying to say. So if I want to brew microbes, I want them to just live in the soil,
Love it.
In
That's probably
an
not
aquaponic system, you want your system set up well enough to just allow them to continue breeding. It's not like you want them to just, if they're dying off and you have to add back microbes to reestablish your nitrification on a consistent basis, then you have a system problem. Like somewhere your design's not working, because otherwise you want it to be sustainable.
That's the true of any living system, a soil system, And that's why I kind of challenge, like, you know, not to be a total dick, but kind of just for discussion's sake, challenge, like, you know, the concept of living soil in containers, just because it has a limit. It's not infinite, and it's you know, abundance. It's a container. It will run out of nutrients.
Right. I see what
Minimum
you're saying.
size,
The
then.
limitations that provides. Go ahead.
What would you think limited size, you know, the size limitation, the smallest you would go, just a bed, you know?
Well, I mean,
4x4
I've done
bed?
it in beds. I've done pots and stuff. You know, it's not that I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just saying that, like, it's a limited deal, and you run into problems, and you have to keep adding. And in a true, like, living soil connected to the earth, I've witnessed, and I also kind of like want to wave the flag, like, hey, we got to get to this point where we don't need to be adding any more shit, you know, or very, very little shit. Like, it's not like I'm feeding every week my living soil bed. Like, I would be, it doesn't need that. You know, you're going to run into issues, right? You know, that's why I use even the terminology inoculant. You know, I hope that I'm not having to come back. You know, usually it's because I messed something up, or I've inoculated with the wrong thing. And you know what I mean? I'm kind of fumbling. We're all kind of fumbling our way through this, you know.
So the benefits of living soil have a point of diminishing returns when you have
living soil,
the size
aquaponics. I you know, our human biome. That's, you know, that's what I'm kind of riffing on. You know,
I see what you're saying. With when it comes to the container size, though, there seems to be a point of diminishing return with those benefits. You talk about the nutrient cycling. You talk about these things that occur require a larger volume to operate at their highest capacity.
Yeah, because, you know, you'll see at different times of the year, if you just, you know, go outside, we all have gardens, you know, or some sort of like garden system around it. You know, you'll notice you dig in the ground in the winter, there's worms there, and then some other parts of the year when it's dry, they retreat. Like, things change, you know.
Hard to replicate in a grow tent. I almost said bro tent. It's even harder to replicate in a bro tent. It's extremely difficult.
Those are events, man.
New partner of Growcast is Brotent. Brotent.com. Don't buy them. We're going to move on to the listener questions.
I was just wondering earlier today if there's a such thing as a brocebo, and I looked it up. Apparently, there is a brocebo, so like a bro placebo.
I think someone slipped me a brocebo earlier because I'm having trouble with my pronunciation.
I wanted to slip one quick question in. Since we have a couple of here, I think all of you guys now have done some breeding, or lots of breeding at the scale that you're at. In case of some of you guys, any advice for people that are just getting started or trying to get into the kind of level that you guys are operating at breeding wise?
I'll start off because I'm not all that big of a breeder. I just recently started as a kind of a professional one. I've only been doing it really for a couple of years. I would say just do it, honestly. Just if you have a passion for something, anything, really. I hear it from all kinds of people. I'd love to, blah, 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 blah. There's probably no easier time these days for people to get into all kinds of different stuff, you know, and something like cannabis breeding is actually fairly simple. And even with people that have low plant counts, like you could honestly, you'll probably have to give the seeds out to friends to see anything that comes from it. But even with 4 plants, you can find 1 male and 3 females and go to town. And you now have, you know, 3 strains that you can hand out to your friends and do fun stuff with. And you'd be amazed the amount of joy you'll get just from popping your own seeds. I've been telling people, like, it's just on a sincere level, like when you pop something, I genuinely thought that I could do something with a couple different lines. And so I put them together and I lucked out. That actually happened. And I've been popping those seeds. And now if I hadn't ever given any seeds to anybody else, I would have simply enjoyed popping those. I've been having a friggin' riot of a time popping several different lines. And so, like, honestly, if you live in the middle of Alaska or Montana or something, you don't know anybody else, and somebody gave you some cannabis seeds, I'll bet you'll have some fun knocking those together and just having some fun, you know. And people take it a little bit too seriously, honestly. Oh my God, I'm a cannabis breeder. It's just plant breeding. That's all it is. It's really not that special. If you become like some famous person, okay, fine. But until then, you're just breeding cannabis seeds. That's all. So I'd say do it. That's basically it.
I like that attitude. Dutch Blooms, where we're gonna.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm a big just start doing it and then learn along the way. You know, with pretty much everything I do, it's my personality. I've got seeds planted. I'm reading like, how do you plant seeds? Like as I'm doing the thing, I'm often even cooking that way and having to run out in the mid cooking, to get the extra ingredient. But I do think it's an important factor, because you can learn and you can change and you can start again. And man, it's just so fun to do something, and especially when you're doing it like with a child mind. That's kind of like, that's all breeding is making observation and then, applying those things. And a child mind, a fresh mind, is really like awesome, because you can observe things that like people that might not notice it because they've done it a few times before and it's not as special, so like, why the heck not? Don't let all that stuff get in the way. Like, I think everyone should be making their own seeds, because the biological factor there, that they are literally, if you grow 2 plants and you make a cross, the thing that will come out of that will likely be better than what you had started with, because the plants are adapted, and sorry, I'm stumbling on my words. The microbes transfer all the way through onto the seed, and like they help as that seed opens, they're right there available onto the root. We've talked with Dr. James White about this. I should be a little bit more eloquent, but
no, you're 100% right, man. As soon as they come out, man, as soon as that radical root comes out, if there's mycorrhizae there, I always use the analogy like a fungus on your finger. If you get a little bit and your fingernail keeps growing, well, that fungus can keep up with it, no problem. And that's what happens if you get that little radical root inoculated with just the tiniest one spore of mycorrhizae. It's on there, man. That's the way to do it. You're 100% right, brother.
It fascinates me that it transfers to the next generation. We have Jeff Lowenfels with Dr. Judith Fitzpatrick both coming on to the next episode of Growcast, and that's what they talk about in Jeff's new book, Teaming with Bacteria, is the birthing process, carrying over microbiology from the parent, much like humans, and how our immune systems and our gut microbiomes are jump started in birth. So that was one of the things he said, and this is him saying this, that it's a bad idea to treat your seeds with hydrogen peroxide because you're wiping out the last generation. So that's
even drying them.
And he quoted Dr. White, so that's really cool.
Even drying them. We got him on Future Cannabis, and it was just me and him, so I got to just like rapid fire him with my dumb questions, and then I was like, so ultimately, like, we should be leaving the seeds inside the weed. A properly cured weed. It's like all this shit, like how to make beer, how to make compost, how to dry your weed, the soil moisture the moisture content in your soil. It's all like right in that right parameter, in that power band.
Very interesting. I'm sorry, I was a little distracted, but we have a visitor. I don't know who this cat is. Can you see him?
Oh, I don't think cats can hurt you at all, man.
He just wandered up, though. He wanted to attend the conference.
So that's right. That's a strange cat. That's not your pet cat. That's just like a
no. This is
Hawaiian
he just
cat.
wandered on. He just wandered on set. So I'm sorry if I got a little distracted there for a moment. Now
Like, you're not wanted here, man.
No,
go home.
Aquaponics did. Aquaponics did. What do you say? He wants to get high. Get him high. Aquaponics did instruct. Raisner did instruct me to that there's no problem going along. We'll go a couple of minutes long here so we can make room for questions. If chat has questions, now's a good time. Drop them in. Questions for panelists. Fire them away in chat, and then we'll begin to address them here. The first one coming from Claude D. What do you do to maintain the aquaponic system in an unheated greenhouse through winter? Well, that's a great question. Do you rebuild it back with fish and all after the winter? And anyone, feel free to jump in if you have insight or an answer. Marty's shaking his head. He's just going.
Talking
I don't know.
Who can't manage to be quiet long enough for me to get on the mic. That was my shut up, shake my head.
Well, how does that work if it gets cold for the fish?
I didn't do it in a greenhouse, but in my outdoor that I used to run at my old spot before I moved, I did remove at least the majority of fish from it. I left a couple of goldfish in one time just to see what happened, and even with like 2 inches of ice on top, they still survived. And it was for like the solid week or so. It was super cold, and didn't really do anything much with them, and they did survive. Obviously, I don't recommend that. That's not really like a great way to go or anything. But for the most part, I would empty it out. And for the coldest part, probably like beginning of December all the way through like maybe mid-February or so, it would be pretty empty and not really much happening in it. And then do a big clean out in the springtime. Well, spring cleaning, get some fish back in there, get some plants back in, start it up again.
2 inches of ice, though. That's absolutely
I have
incredible.
a 6-year now going strawberry 4x8 media bed. There's a strawberry patch right next to my house. That the only water source is one of those black, those black dry bins we use, with the yellow toppers. It's one of those. That's the reservoir and has a pump in it, and it goes like that. In the winter, I take the fish out and I just let it be. And in the summer, I put a couple of fish in there, and it's very basic, and we just get strawberries out of it. They get snow on there in the winter and stuff, and it's fine,
Jeez, that is very surprising to me.
I will say, if possible, try not to let wet hydrogen especially freeze. It'll shatter into like this rubble that gets really hard to deal with, and is like, it just kind of disintegrates when you try to move it, and it's a pain in the ass to deal with. So if you can either if you can bring in that hydrogen, or just keep it warm enough, maybe with just like a black cover or something, you'll really save yourself a lot of headache.
That is very interesting. Thomas, how do you deal with it? I know in Oklahoma it gets pretty cold, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we have all our fish are in a climate controlled, it's kind of a warehouse type building. It's a big barn. I was thinking, I'm just speculating here. You could stock, like cold water fish or koi or trout or something like that. Couldn't you just put, maybe like a cold frame over your garden or over your aquaponic system to keep it from freezing?
That's crazy.
I don't know. That's
really
my first thought.
Very, very interesting stuff from this tent grower. Someone's jump in there, or am I hearing things?
Oh, I just said, yeah, you definitely could, switch out your fish. I know some people that grow trout. There's a local place here that just grows vegetables in their aquaponic system. But in the winter months, they grow trout, and they, basically they just keep them for one season. So, they go in, they grow up to about, 9-10 months old, and then they harvest them before it gets super hot and they die off. But they restock the fish tank every year.
Very interesting. We have another question here. If we could move on to Martial Artist 2012's question. Oh, this is something that team member Mary Beth has told us is a problem here. He asks, anyone know what's up with invasive Asian jumping worms? Serious issue, negative impact in the garden? I see Alabama jumpers included in that group. Now, these are these crazy jumping worms that fuck with the soil and disrupt the soil. Is anybody up to date on this? This is news. So Mary Beth Sanchez was on our show, and this is something she said was this is an invasive species. They're going crazy, and you'll see them. You can Google videos of them too. They like twitch and jump faster, like an earthworm. You know what an earthworm moves like. But these jumping worms are again invasive. They're breeding like crazy, and they do something very bad to the soil. I'm not an expert as to soil composition and why one worm working its way through and pooping is good and another is bad. But this is something that I've heard, and maybe we'll have Mary Beth come on and do a growcast, because I've heard about this, Martial Artist. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? And yeah, I've heard that it's bad. I can't say any more, unfortunately. I wish I knew more.
Now we got jumping worms. Could it get any worse?
Ninja worms.
Jumping worms that don't even compost.
And they're made out of titanium that's on fire.
You know what's great though? We can have the ninja worms fight the murder hornets. And we got a defense system now.
Yeah, we'll just have them waste each other. And then...
Yes, you're all compost. I like
it. Stay tuned, Martial Artist. We'll do more on that. Where's this one coming from? Rootwork LLC. how do you brew the fish waste? I think that was directed towards Dutch Blooms, but anybody want to jump in on brewing fish waste?
I can tell you my recipe, which is you may have to adjust per size, but I use 5 gallons of aerobically stabilized fish waste to 95 gallons of water and non-chlorinated water, and then add 5 ounces of molasses, and I brew vigorously for 30 hours in the climate that I'm going to apply it. That's kind of a nice factor if you can hit that, temperature wise, and humidity would be nice if not in the exact same space.
When you say brew, you mean aerate, right?
Yeah, wherever you brew it, if you could do it in the same space that you're growing in, that way it's the same climate and the microbes are getting used to, and they're like you're not brewing outside and they're cold and you bring them in, you know what I mean? Or they're in a hot space.
Hey, can I ask, you were talking about fungal dominance before. Is using like the fish waste, is that how, and the different microbe brews is how you get fungal dominance in your soil?
The fish waste doesn't hit the fungal dominance. That's why I make compost, and that's why I don't, kind of rely on a media specific. But what I was saying was in like, when I say media in terms of aquaponics, it's a media bed like the gravel beds or the hydroton beds. That's what we mean. Not like a cocoa. And in that, there's no room for the fungi to live. That's why Steve developed the dual root zone idea, where he has part soil, and that allows the fungi to live and have that balance. That's where I was hitting that, I think. Does that make sense?
It does.
All right. And brew vigorously, you said. You get a big pump in there, you get like an aero mixer.
Yeah.
Sounds like a cool t-shirt. Brew vigorously.
Yeah, that would be a cool t-shirt.
So we did something similar in that we take our the waste whenever we're flushing out our baffle filters and our mineralization tanks. We'll take that waste and let it settle for a little while and get the solids on top, and then kind of drain off just the water on the bottom. And we brew that with a little bit of molasses and then a little bit of worm castings for about 36 hours. And we just water that straight onto the soil and put some of that in our media beds too. We have really good results with it. So yeah.
It's killer.
I figured I'd also add, first off, I thought somebody already made a meme about this already. I thought it was fucking great. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I am blaming legitimate technical issues.
No, it's fine. Marty and I have had to panic this morning to make sure we got the thing without a hitch. So I just thought that was hysterical. I like to brew the fish waste for anywhere from 3 days to 7 days. If it's really late into flower, I might brew it as long as 14 days to really make sure that nitrogen is completely consumed. And there's, it's mainly just those other nutrients that I want from it. And then I'll take things like liquid IMO or even IMO2, IMO3, IMO2 especially, or even IMO3, and put that in there just to inoculate that fish waste to help make sure it has that full food web to break that fish waste down so you're not missing anything as far as mineralizing that. And just a teaspoon for a 500 gallon thing is perfectly fine. You're just seeding those microbes. You're going to have the aerated environment anyway. It doesn't matter. But it does take a couple of extra days, more than the 24 to 36 hours for other types of brewing, because there is a lot more waste. And then when we shut that off for about an hour or two so that the waste separates to the bottom and you have just that clear water at the top. And then we have a piece of pipe that has an adjustable thing on it if we want to adjust it up or down, that has a T manifold. And if you can put a T with another set of T's and slow down that individual intake as much as possible, you'll get less waste vacuumed up from the bottom. And then you'll just get all that nice heavy mineralized water from the upper portion of it that goes out to the rest of your plants. This way you don't spread that fish waste. Then you can just top it back off with some fresh fish waste and fresh water and keep mineralizing it and keep breaking it down the same way that you would compost, just doing it in a liquid form.
Yeah, and just to go back and clarify, because Steve just made a lot better explanation. I wasn't talking about coming right out of the filter. So when I come out of my filter with fish poop, I have a big sludge anaerobic tank that's always brewing year round, always full, just getting topped off and getting pulled off the bottom. And so it, you know, I'll top it off. I'll be adding stuff every week or 2 weeks, and I'll pull off it maybe once a month, once every 6. You know, obviously the math doesn't work there, so I end up having to slow down and burn some. But point is, it's already stabilized is what I'm dealing with, and then I'm brewing out that stuff.
Interesting about the nitrogen, though. I didn't know that, up to 14 days on that brew. Steve Reisner dropping knowledge as usual.
Hey, how long does it last if you're investing that much time? When can you start using it, and how long does it last? How long can you keep that going for?
So you would, if you do those longer brews, usually what we do is we'll do that, especially if I've already filled that system up, or that thing up, and towards the end of the month, we'll just want to get rid of the last of that waste and that's left over in the system. So we'll take that and either set that one particular tank up as a long-term mineralization tank. Usually we run them in pairs, I think sets of 3, so we can have one as a quick turn, one as a longer turn, and then, you know, and do it that way. So they're in one state or the other as far as the rotations go. But once we run it quite a while and we have some heavier waste in there, then we'll go ahead and do that longer breakdown. And then once that's done, we'll take that waste and put it in our worm bins and let the worms finish breaking that down the rest of the way with whatever fan leaves or other trimmings or root balls or whatever else that we need to break down. And then all that can just get recycled back in. That helps us make up for any soil that's consumed by the fungi and consumed by the rest of it. Typically for a vegetable system in aquaponics commercially, for every 10,000, if they utilize that method, for every 10,000 square feet of vegetable production, they can actually generate about 2,000 pounds of living soil every year from the earthworm castings and the breakdown of just the leaves and normal roots that you pick off over the course of a normal commercial run. So people don't often think about aquaponics as generating a lot of living soil, but it really does. If you set it up in the right types of ways, it can generate a ton of soil every year that you then can utilize in other parts of your farm.
It's nuts, man. It's that beautiful closed loop system that everybody is so envious of. We are over the time here. We want to make sure we leave time for Marty. There's one more question. This will be perfect to end on. Eaton, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He asks, how does stocking trout work given they're migratory during spawn, or is this not right? They're going to try to swim upstream and hop out of your reservoir into your bag of soil? Or how does that work, man?
Typically, trout can be pretty tricky just because they are very cold water fish, so you'd really want to do them in a decoupled system, which we don't do as much these days. And then secondarily, you'd also want to work on the issue of trout and salmonids tend to be much more sensitive to potassium and other mineral levels. So because of that, they are not always the best choice for cannabis. And again, most trout, I mean, the hottest they can really handle is 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is quite a bit cooler than we want for optimal cannabis growth. So they don't really match up compatibility wise. Whereas a panfish or a tilapia or koi or perch or yellow perch are another great one with a better plate price, are much better fits because of the temperature range.
Just like migration.
How far?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have that stock tank, and I was kind of worried about the fish dying. It's surprising how far, just like a tilapia or a koi, they can go down pretty low without and still surviving. No, am I wrong on that? As far as temperature,
tilapia are a little more sensitive to cold weather. So around 60 degrees, if I'm not wrong, around 60 degrees, you're kind of in a dangerous spot. But the koi definitely can go a little lower.
Yeah, okay, that's what it is, man. I do remember there was, yeah, I know there's some fish that'll at least withstand. When you guys say cold water, what are y'all talking about, though?
Cold water would be anything below about 66, traditional 65 for as far as fish species go. Or 60, I guess, would be another good cutoff.
I wouldn't even go to 60. That would scare the shit out of me.
I mean, I've kept tilapia. We had a emergency situation at the one facility we were at. That water got down to about 54, and those tilapia were where they weren't moving much, hanging out by the filter, but they survived.
Wow.
They weren't
Yeah,
happy, but they lived through it. You know, the biggest issue, if you have something like that with a power outage or something like that that you can't control, is making sure when you do bring that temperature up that you do it slowly. If you do it quickly, you will kill them really, really fast. You'll kill them in a couple of hours. You have
Right,
to.
or you can,
couple of days at least.
in certain fish, you can even like trigger breeding practices that will make them start fighting with each other also. So temperature fluctuation not only affects, you know, their overall health and stuff, but they can trigger, like catfish, for instance. They will lay eggs, and if they don't have significant cover, they'll literally like fight each other to the death over protecting the eggs or for territory, depending on if you're, you know, the male or the female. So definitely be aware that temperature changes and fluctuation in your water, even if like just an outdoor grow throughout, you know, springtime, that those things can come up. So if you start seeing your catfish have all kinds of like bruises and scrapes on them, you might want to go through and check your tank and see if you can pull the eggs out that have already been laid, even if you want to try and hatch them or whatever. But usually just to get them out of the tank so they stop fighting. Otherwise, they will start killing each other.
Awesome. I think that answers Eaton's question thoroughly. And I think should we wrap it up here, Steve? Let everyone do a little pluggy and then move on?
Sure, yeah. We'll start off with you. I know you were very generous to donate your time here for us while you're far, far away.
Man, it's no problem. I'm just kicking it. Oh, thank you. Of course, Growcast. Find us on Spotify. Find us on any podcast app, growcastpodcast.com. Check out membership. Things are going great over there. You'll enjoy it. But yeah, that's all. That's all for now. Follow us on Instagram at Growcast.
That's been great content and really good coffee too. Purity Coffee. We have some.
Oh, of course. Thank you, man. Thanks for shouting out Purity Coffee. I don't just work in cannabis. The Coffee, Health, and Science podcast is my other show. But yeah, come check out Growcast. That's what people are here for. Check out the episodes with Steve. He's got a couple of really great shows on there. And everyone on this panel is invited either on my show for the first time or back again if you have been. So please, guys, come and check us out. And thank you all, you illustrious panelists.
Right on, man. Right on. I'm going to take you up on that offer, brother.
That sounds great, Scotty. It was cool meeting you.
It's good meeting you, man.
We also
Marty
have,
says hit me up. Of course, Marty. He got to get you on there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Thank you,
Thank you
Jordan.
so much. We also have Scotty. You have the Duke Road Show and all kinds of awesome stuff going on.
Yeah. I think this is our 7th or 8th year doing it. And it's a website where we have grow questions. We do most days we have either a podcast or a YouTube show going out. And it's basically either talk and grow, which is could be anything, any question that somebody asks. And the whole secret to that show is the talent, like Aquaponic Steve over here. Everyone will be some really interesting questions from growers, and then a ton of really good questions or answers from other growers, man, really talented growers that donate their time. That's the DGC is that community, and I am proud. So right on, man. Go over to dudegrows.com if you want to check it out, or I think at this point you can just yell Dude Grows into your phone, and pretty sure if you just think Dude Grows, it'll show up at this point. So give it a whirl, man. See what happens.
And, he also makes a great microbial in your new system and adding to your soil and all that. It's definitely something I've been using for a long time. We got some samples and tested them at the aquaponics source. It made a big difference for us in the lab, and ever since then we've been using it. So definitely like it. He has all different types of stuff available, and it works great with aquaponics and living soil, and even planted aquariums. So definitely check it out.
That's awesome. You're my aquaponics tester over there. I'm like, damn, I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to say things I can't back up, because you kill somebody's fish, man. I don't know. That's actually kill my plants, kill my fish. Pissed either way.
All right. Well, next up, we'll have Thomas tell us a little bit how to find out more about Little River Aquaponics.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram or Facebook. Really, the Instagram is a lot more active. And then we have this half-assed website as well. But really, yeah, feel free to, direct message us on Instagram or email us either way. And, if you're in the Oklahoma area, we love having visitors. Get a hold of me.
Yeah, and he has an awesome facility, all kinds of living soil beds and aquaponics and going on at the same time. And it's really a neat place. If you're into regenerative farming, you'll really love his farm. A truly neat place to check out. And then we have Josh Rutherford with Regenerative Conference and Regenerative Seed Co.
Nice Instagram, man. I was liking those photos. I'm gonna have to follow you, Thomas.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. I do the Science of Regenerative Cannabis Cultivation Conference, and you can find there's the page regenerativeorganiccannabis.com, or you can find me on Instagram, Dutch_blooms. That's kind of the easiest way to get directly to me. But check out the site. You can also find my my seed company, regenerativeseeds.com, where I sell my seeds and seeds of my friends.
Yep, there you go.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Steve. Thanks to Marty and everybody, Fumi, that's been working hard to keep this thing going all weekend. And Marty's got the hard slot, man. He's been moderating all weekend, and now he's got to wrap it up. And cheers to you, dude.
And
That's why I'm letting you guys go over. So my time I have to actually talk is just getting smaller and smaller.
Fumi, why don't you tell everybody about your website? You have some awesome photography and genetics preservation kits as well.
That's exactly what they're called. Yes, museum quality genetic preservation kits. Fumidoro.com. Let's see here. Fumidoro and the Flavors is my YouTube channel. We like to have a lot of frenzied sometimes discussions, but usually pretty chill discussions, honestly. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we have sort of different themes. Tuesdays, I like to have a guest, like an intelligent, a breeder or somebody, somebody smart, maybe like Dr. Faust one day. But then Wednesdays, we kind of chill out. We actually have game night and so on, and weed and whiskey Wednesday alternating. And then Saturdays, we do, well, thank you for showing the website. Saturdays, we do brews and buds. So you guys are always welcome to show up. And it's not like we strictly only talk about those things, but, the idea has always been like, oh, let's focus on a beer and or beer and wine and so on, and buds on Saturdays. Kick back, relax. This is my website. I took all the photos. I bred all the seeds. I planted them, grew them. What else? Built the website. What else? Any misspellings were mine. Let's see here. What else? Take a look, ladies and gentlemen. Black Prince Ruby. He just scrolled by. One of my favorites, honestly, these days. Those are just my photos on there. Morgana. A friend of mine did some diamonds, took some pictures of those diamonds. That smelled so good. It was GMO, like just ripping open a jar of garlic. It was crazy, like garlic gas funk. Lovely. You wouldn't, it's one of those GMO, it's one of those things you wouldn't think you'd enjoy, but you do. Anyway, Morgana, ladies and gentlemen, take a look. Use the coupon code, since we're still here, use the coupon code BRAINS in honor of our friend D. He's D Zombie. He likes to say brains. So use the coupon code BRAINS for 14% off. Thanks for showing it.
Awesome, man. Support the people that take their time to come talk to us.
Right, I appreciate it.
Super huge help with us all weekend. Marty and Fumidoro have helped us with the co-hosts and stuff. If you guys haven't noticed, we've had some connection issues and stuff. And being able to have the co-host set up means if any one of us could disconnected, we still have somebody as a backup that keeps the stream going. So thanks everybody for helping us this weekend, and everybody in chat for helping moderation, and all the awesome speakers all weekend that have dropped a ton of awesome knowledge. Super excited to go back and rewatch some of this stuff again, because my brain is definitely getting full. Well, thanks, Jordan. I'll let you get back to your wonderful paradise there in Hawaii.
Thanks, everybody. I'll hop off here. Steve, let's do an episode soon, buddy.